believing in God, yet...
I was raised Catholic, so...
Right.
I used to believe in God, I know about it, but there's nothing there. There's nothing, there's no hard evidence.
No hard evidence?
He exists.
No hard evidence?
No hard evidence.
I will tell you this. I'd say without God, you can't... With God, without God, you don't know anything. It's with God that you know everything you know. And I'd say even though that you're an atheist, that you're presupposing a lot of things that require the foundation of God in the beginning. Like, for example, you and me are having a logical discussion right now, okay? Logic itself. Now, if you know what you know by looking at evidence, what you said before, you look at evidence, but you experience evidence through your five senses. Through seeing, through hearing, through smelling, through tasting, and through touching. Your five senses. Now, logic can't be experienced, or it can't be known, not experienced, it can't be known through your five senses. Logic's immaterial, it's a concept, abstract, but it's also universal and absolute. I mean, one of the laws of logic is the law of non-contradiction. A can't be non-A. Okay? The law of non-contradiction simply says that if two answers are proposed for the same question, they can't both be right. Either one of them is wrong or both of them are wrong. Now, if you're using logic and you say what you know to be true is through your five senses, then obviously you don't know if logic is true or not. Because logic itself, you can't know through your five. So logic is something you assume. Something you assume. So if you can't know logic through your five senses, you can't know that it's true through your five senses, yet you're using it, you're assuming it's true. And the only proper precondition, the only proper foundation for believing that logic is absolute and that it's universal is in the beginning God. For himself, he's a logical God, he's immaterial, he's absolute, and he's universal.
Can you logically assert that God exists?
What's that?
How can you logically assert that God exists?
I'm saying you can't use logic at all consistently without knowing, without saying, in the beginning God, I believe that. God is the proper presupposition for using logic consistently.
That doesn't make any sense. Logic to me is
well, how do you know that?
Because things are self-evident.
What do you mean things are self-evident?
Things that exist around us exist.
You just use logic to prove logic. It's called circular reasoning. You can't use logic to prove logic. I'm telling you.
You're assuming that God exists. I mean, okay,
No, I'm telling you.
About God,
the only proper presupposition for logic existing itself as a universal, abstract, immaterial, absolute concept is in the beginning God. If you don't have God in the beginning and you're going to be consistent, you can't use logic. There's only two consistent worldviews out there, young people.
How can you assume God is, I mean, that's inconsistent because God...
Who says being inconsistent? Show me how it's inconsistent to say that God is the only presupposition for logic. The only proper, the only consistent one.
That's the problem.
Well, what's the problem? Tell me what the problem is.
You can't assert that God exists.
What's that?
You can't assert that God exists.
I'm telling you, why can't I assert that? You're asserting logic just exists, and I'm telling you without God in the beginning, logic doesn't exist.
Prove it.
What's that?
Prove it.
Okay, what's your epistemology? Let's go through this again.
I guess rationalism.
Rationalism? Is it empiricism?
That doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does matter.
Why?
Because you're asserting how you receive truth. And if you only receive truth a certain way, then you can't believe in logic. You can't believe logic is true.
It's true.
So you have a faulty foundation. The only proper...
Logic works, but it works though.
Well, how do you know it works?
Because the laws that we define, you use them to prove things.
You're using logic, once again, to prove logic. You're using logic, once again, to prove logic.
I'm not asserting anything. I'm not asserting anything about logic. I'm just asserting...
Are you having a logical discussion with me right now? Well, then you're using logic. Anytime you use logic...
anything about logic. I'm just not acknowledging God.
What's that?
I'm not... Well, let's go away from logic.
No, this is important here. If you're using logic right now in this discussion with me, which you are, whether you believe it or not, you're already presupposing in the beginning God if you're going to be consistent. So right now, you're borrowing, you thief, you're borrowing my worldview.
Let's start with the natural state.
What's that?
Let's start with the natural state.
What about the natural state?
That we exist.
Well, how do you know that?
Because it's self-evident.
How is that self-evident?
Because we can use our senses.
Now wait a minute here. Do you believe God exists?
No.
So you're an atheist?
Yes.
So you believe you care about...
No, I don't God exists. I do not subscribe to the belief that God.
You're agnostic.
No, agnosticism is just that. The idea behind agnosticism is that you cannot prove.
How do you
everybody's
believe you
agnostic.
came to be? How do you believe you came to be right now? Evolution?
As a human being.
Yeah.
As a physical life form.
As a human being, a physical life, how did you come to be like you are right now?
I think we evolved. I think there was some evolution.
And so if evolution is true, okay, which most people probably at university assume, unless you're a Christian, if evolution is true, you're saying that you came, hold on a second, you're saying that you came about to be where you are now over millions of years of random mutations processes, okay? If that is true, who says your 5 senses are trustworthy? If that is true, who says your brain is working properly? You're saying to yourself, Evan. I'm saying maybe your self-evident brain isn't working properly. According to evolution, you're just a bag of chemicals put together over millions of years.
You can say that. What really mean?
So that's true. That's true. That would be true. Not about you need to say. I'm not making a baseless, empty claim. It's the truth.
Let's get to like the device that you're trying to.
The point I'm trying to make is this: anything in this world that you use or engage in or assume that's immaterial, and abstract, and absolute and universal, you must have in the beginning God to have those things. And
Greater cause.
Prove it.
What's that?
Prove it.
I just did prove it.
Greater cause.
You say that God exists. You didn't prove that God exists. You said that.
Wherever there's an effect, there's a greater cause.
You became into the unicorn, magical unicorn in the sky. I can say that, but that's not proof.
So you must have an immaterial, universal, absolute God to have a universal, absolute, immaterial concept. You must have the cause must be greater than the effect. Okay, so like for example, another example besides logic is morality. Do you believe in any absolute form of right or wrong?
Only that I choose for myself.
Oh, so it's relative.
Yeah, and
So there, like I said, there's no absolute then.
right, exactly.
So all you can do is if you see someone raping someone over there, raping a 5-year-old, all you can say is, well, I think you're wrong.
Exactly.
You can't tell them they're wrong
What we can
emphatically.
do is we can create these laws based on how we do a certain set of conditions that we set for ourselves. For example, if we can say, I can see that person getting raped over there. I probably wouldn't like it. So I'm going to be against it.
It's a 5-year-old.
Hold on a second. That's what you say how it came about. That's not what I said. You say that. But that's not what I
We
said.
come up with all these laws. We come up with
No, we haven't come up with
the
anything.
concept of God.
No, we haven't come up with these things at all. God gave us these things. The Bible says that you have a conscience. If God wrote his moral law upon your heart. Now, if you're going to be consistent like this young man is, if you're not a Christian, you have to say exactly what he said. Well, I just think you're wrong. I don't know you're wrong. I don't know rape's wrong. I don't know for sure if murder is wrong or if child abuse is wrong or pedophilia is wrong. I just think it's wrong or it's wrong for me. But the fact of the matter is, to say anything is absolutely wrong, what you're doing is to say something's wrong, right or wrong, you must have a standard most to judge what is right and what is wrong. If you have a standard, who gives you that standard? It must be an absolute lawgiver. Otherwise, it can't be absolute. If you're the standard giver, hold on a second, if you're the standard giver, that makes you the absolute standard giver. But guess what? At some point in time, you didn't exist. So who was the absolute standard giver before that? So now you become arbitrary, you become autonomous, and guess what? You're not the arbiter of the universe. You're not the rule of the universe. Only God is. So if you're going to be an atheist or an agnostic, that includes you, young man, you can't say anything is absolutely right or wrong. You can't believe in laws of science. You can't believe in, laws of science, we assume them to be absolute. People may say with their words that
No, you don't have to assume they're absolute. We just have to use see if they work. If they work.
How do you know they work?
Because we can define. We just have definitions.
You test and reproduce? Who said your 5 senses are working properly?
We don't have to. It doesn't matter.
Well, if you don't know for sure your 5 senses are working properly, then how do you know your testing and reproducing, observing are actually accurate? You don't.